Hello and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duville and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man attacked by a life form that he has never encountered before.
Tim Longo.
Oh, I should call you X-Tim or Tim.
Mm-hmm.
Tim X? Tim X, I guess.
Tim-X.
Tim-X. Tim 10. Maybe it's the 10 parasite. Nobody really clears these things up when you're doing all this reading. Anyway, we're doing a little bonus episode this week about Metroid Fusion because we just can't get enough. Tim really can't get enough. I was like, I'll go back and play this game I played 20 years ago while I'm playing this other thing. And Tim's like, yeah, we can talk about that. We both picked up Dread, which was recently on sale, and he played some of the original Metroid, and almost all of
until the
almost 0.1% remains for Tim of that, but yet neither one of us found the space jump boots in Metroid Prime.
I cannot believe it.
It's right there. It's right there behind that door.
It's literally in plain sight almost.
You just need the double jump. You can get it
everything
really early in the game.
Yeah. Once you get the morph ball.
All you need is the double jump. You don't even need the morph ball. Oh, no, you need the morph ball to get up to the level.
Half height. Yeah. Unbelievable. Oh, 96%. I'm going to go back and get it.
I assume you saved before Ridley, and that's the save you kept.
Yeah.
It asks you to save over it.
I don't remember. I think I saved over it.
I did too. Well, I got to open hard mode. Like I'm ever going to play hard mode. Speaking of hard mode, let's talk about the difficulty of Metroid Fusion.
Well, yeah, and then as a reminder, we talked about this during this previous series, but Fusion, as a listener, wrote in about to remind us.
Yeah, it was Fusion, Blarg 42.
Fusion did come out at the same time,
or maybe the second quest.
Double package, right? Where you could get
it was one. Yeah, you could connect them because the GameCube had connectivity. There was you could buy another thing, a cable to connect the GameCube to the Game Boy Advance, and you could. Some games had sort of connectivity. You could. There were a bunch of different wild things you could do. I remember my sons had maybe that was the Wii. There was a game that they could fight their Pokemon on, like a stadium game. That might have been on the Wii. But there were other things that were.
Yeah, Pokemon Stadium.
We played Four Sword. We played... it
was GameCube, I thought.
Crystal Chronicles. It might have been GameCube. I don't know.
Did you ever play the Pac-Man game?
No. Oh, I do remember that was a thing.
Where one person is Pac-Man on the Game Boy and the four ghosts are... split screen on the TV.
That's a thing they brought back on the Wii U. I didn't realize they'd gotten it from the GameCube.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Hilarious though, because who would have thought? But the ghosts, the Pac-Man is first person, right? Going through the maze, and the ghosts are top down.
No, it's got to be the other way around.
Something, one of those.
Yeah, it's got to be the other because Pac-Man's got to see where the ghosts are.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, it was funny.
Yeah,
it's a good party game.
That's pretty wild. Yeah, I bet that would be fun. Anyway, let's talk
connectivity.
Fusion. Yes.
Oh, also, I played Splinter Cell on the GameCube, Splinter Cell 1, with the connectivity with my GBA, and the radar, the minimap radar was on the GBA.
Yeah,
I don't remember the advantage to that.
I was going to say, what is the point?
Cool.
Some of this is the second screen app all over again.
Yeah.
Which is funny because both I guess it was the 360 or the one, maybe the one and the PS4 both had, in theory, second screen apps, and nobody did anything with them.
Yeah, no, it died on the vine. Yeah,
but
then there's of course Tingle. You got
to have your Tingle tuner
on. Anyway, Metroid Fusion, you could unlock, which is not in the remastered version. You can unlock a suit that would show up in Prime, the Fusion suit. I don't even know what it did because I never did that. But
it just looked red.
But I thought it was really cool that they had both, regardless of the connectivity. I thought it was a bit ahead of its time to have both games come out at the same time on different systems that were both quote unquote modern systems in their category. And, it's like great marketing synergy and all that kind of nonsense. And, this one, Fusion, is, a modernized throwback. It's 2D, 16-bit, etc., 32-bit, whatever it is.
Yeah, I don't know. It looks like 16, but
it felt like they're doing a few more things. But I don't know how to tell really. But just like that nostalgia, you know what I mean? Like it felt like a Super Metroid, sequel in a way. And at the same time that you're playing, like we just talked about for 4 episodes, this really like revolutionary perspective on Metroid. So I'm glad I played it. I'm glad we're talking about it because I think it's super fascinating. And it's also interesting to see from a difficulty standpoint, the two side by side as well, because I feel like Prime, albeit there are definitely some sections that are harder than they need to be, that definitely felt more mass market to me, as it probably should be because of what their goals were.
Right.
But then you play Fusion and you're like, this is a hardcore, the bosses specifically.
Yeah.
This is a hardcore game. Like this is like rough.
Yes.
If we weren't playing on the Switch with the
save states,
impossible. States.
Yeah, rewinding and all that stuff.
I would have taken
point of order. It's a 32-bit CPU. However, it also had a 16-bit mode, and the 16-bit ran a little bit faster. So I would not be surprised to find out that it was a 16-bit
that we're playing,
that we played. Who knows? It's
interesting.
Yeah.
It
could run both 16-bit and 32-bit code. I mean, it's a ARM machine, so it can do. The architecture's weird, but anyway, not important.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, I mean, it just means that like you have some 16-bit instruction links and some 32-bit instruction links, and probably you can run twice as many 16-bit ones, more or less. You can't make something faster than one clock, but you might be able to do multiplies faster or something like that, or divides, certainly. Anyway, just a little nerdiness there for you.
Yeah, I understood the first couple words, and then after that, it was like,
sorry, that's me.
No, that's why you're here. Yeah, I'm glad you bring this perspective. Anyway,
thank God for the difficulty, because I think there were bosses towards the end. Ridley and the
nightmare was
that plant thing.
The plant thing was...
Oh, and the nightmare. That's right, the nightmare. Oh my God, that thing was brutal. So there's any number of bosses where if I did not have a save state in this day and age, I would just like put it down. Like, okay, yeah, I remember. I beat that once before. I'm okay. I don't need to do it again. Like I beat it back when I didn't have save states, 20 years ago. When I was 6. So it was.
But the irony though is that even with save states and rewind feature, which I don't know how much you use that, it's still too hard.
Oh yeah, way too hard.
It's like I can literally rewind time based on frames, and I'm still having trouble. And one thing that I wanted to bring up in that is that that I think kills two birds with one stone on topics is because it's the GBA. You have 2 buttons, a D-pad, and 2 bumpers, 2 triggers that were very seldomly used, and my memory is actually on the system itself, not that easy to use.
Much easier on the GBA.
On the GBA versus the SP, you mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Just because of the size, right? I mean, the GBA was just tiny SP. Little, or SP, yeah, sorry. It was just this tiny little square.
The clamshell one. Yeah,
it's tiny.
It's for children, yeah.
Oh, thanks.
It literally is for children.
That's why I could beat it.
Anyway, but because of the, I think we both ended in the same place, and I don't know if I'll return to it, even though we're literally right near the end. fighting Samus X requires you to use both buttons in quick succession and holding one of them down. So jumping and charging your beam together, but you only have one thumb. And so it's the rolling the thumb method or what have you in the middle of this very intense, very hard. Like, she is not messing around with her attacks.
Yeah.
And there is a pattern you can get to, but it's like it's ironically, I didn't anticipate it, but ironically it goes back to one of my takeaways from Prime related to being on the Switch. It's like controller matters. And I'm just really surprised that they went after that. It seems like that's the dominant way. I don't remember you being able to change your controller settings or key mappings.
No.
So
I mean,
choice.
First off, this guy has got two thumbs. You said one. You've only got one thumb.
But the other one is on the D-pad.
Second of all, absolutely insane, right? And of course, back in the day, you had to figure that stuff out. I guess there might have been game facts or something like that. So you could probably read you could read a description of what you're supposed to do, right? Or you could have a strategy guide. I didn't buy any strategy guides back in the day, but
they wanted you to.
They sure did.
I did actually buy the Metroid Prime strategy guide. Now that I think about it.
Okay.
I still miss the jump boots.
Both
after
times.
all these years. Apparently, I never read the book. I just bought it. I actually had that book for a long time, like up until the last couple of years ago.
You could have kept it. You have this podcast. You might still be able to get a copy and find all the things you missed. Yeah. Anyway, well, speaking of missing things, I guess this is a game where you can miss things because they keep moving where you're supposed to go. That's not as good a segue. But the goalposts constantly are moving in the levels here, which is it's super strange. I feel on the one hand, there's parts of that I really, really like. I really like some of the things they do to sort of break their level geometry, like having an elevator stop and you have to.
That was a great moment.
Blast your way out of that, and or where you have to break the glass. There's some moments like that in Metroid Prime for some of the collectibles or whatever power ups. I think one of the beam weapons is or one of the beam powered up beam, super missile beam things is under one of the crackable glass tubes, which is definitely a throwback to these sorts of games. Those are good, really, really good moments. But it's also just kind of oh, really? Again, something different has happened, and I can't do the thing you want me to do. I have to do this other thing. Is a very funny. It's almost parodic. Self-parody. To be doing it again and again and again.
Yeah,
can't trust anything the AI says. Words to live by.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, they leaned into the AI thing, which was kind of neat and a little bit refreshing. I mean, in Metroid, you didn't have somebody giving you instructions, right? You were just on your own.
No, I mean, I don't think so.
And in Prime, you're not either, right? No. So it's just interesting that they chose to have this handler, basically, right, where they're giving you guidance. And it sort of ended up being more feeling more linear, which was very weird structurally. I like the world structure, but the elevators being all on connected in the same thing, it's a very unique Metroid game in that way.
Go to this one now. Go to 2. Go to 4. Go to 3. Go to 6. Yeah.
And late game, they eventually connect them through secret passageways that you can find, which is kind of a cool reveal. And those are also neat moments where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go all the way to the right of the screen and I'm going to end up in level 2 because this whole time you've been using the elevators, the only way you can get to each of the floors. So those were neat moments. But it's at the end of the game that you find those almost. Right. And so it's almost wasted. So it's just really it's almost I feel like Fusion, not having played every single Metroid game, but of all of the ones that I played, I feel like Fusion is almost like this little weird, experiment or something, right? Where they try to do all these different things. And even though the structure is the structure because I technically, until the end of the game, can go to any of the levels in any order. The way that they designed the lock and keys for each of the levels doesn't really let you do that. Like they're pretty hard and fast. And so, once you get things, you can go back to other things, but other areas, but it just doesn't feel like Super Metroid in that way, where there's a really cohesive world. And then as a segue to Metroid really quickly, one really interesting thing that reminded me of Zelda 1 is that Metroid 1 structurally almost feels like an open world game because you can go kind of anywhere for the most part. And of course, there's locks and keys there too. But you can do things in any order. There's no map, so you have to kind of find your way. I did use a guide for a lot of it because of that. But I was surprised that you can go get the ice beam or not. That's up to you,
Right,
and it's like there's no doors that relate to the ice beam. It's just number of missiles. And so the beams, the whole concept of your, you talked about in Prime, the tools that you have being different ways to use those tools and locks and keys, that wasn't really there in the original, which I thought was fascinating. And there's also 2 ice beams. There's 2 places to get the ice beam. So which I think I know why they did that, but it's interesting. It's just interesting to play that. It's just a lot more flexible of a game than I remember.
Yeah, no, it's surprising. I think I've now, with the exception of Dread, which I have now and can play, and there was one that was called Federation Force.
Yeah, it was a multiplayer game.
Yeah, I have no interest in that, but I think I have played either all of them or a remade version of all of them at this point. Not necessarily to completion. I haven't finished Metroid, and of course I have Dread to look forward to. I'm going to save that for a little snack over the weekend. I'll only snack on it. Not that I will play all.
Yeah, wow. I was going to say that's pretty bold.
Yeah, no. I didn't. I'm not going to finish all of them. I'm not going to go back and finish Metroid like you did. I'm not going to. I'm probably not going to finish. Zero Mission is the one on the 3DS.
Samus Returns. It's called
Samus Returns. Yeah. I'm not going to finish that one, but I think other than that, I've played.
That one's good though. I will say though,
I was really enjoying it. It's just at some point I put it down, and so
yeah,
I'd have
too late then. I hope they put that on Switch. I hope they do a Dread. I don't know why they wouldn't port that over. I think people should play it. But full disclosure, though, I think I probably mentioned this on the cast. But did I get inspired to play that from Super Metroid when we played that? Probably around that time.
Maybe
I did not beat Ridley at the end. Also because it was too hard. I think I'm literally stuck at the last boss on that game too. And I think I'm nearly 100% on that game too. But again, it's come on. Why does this have Mother Brain in the original? If you go into the room with Mother Brain without enough missiles, A-Bug, you can't finish.
Oh, I believe it.
And I'm just why is this so hard? The spike, the difficulty spike is just off the charts. So it's frustrating.
Well, the game is more completable in a shorter period. They do have save states or something like that, right? So you can kind of
codes.
Codes basically. So you basically get a 6-digit or 8-digit, whatever, and it takes you to a specific place. Very common at the time, even up to the PS1, where I think they did not require a memory card. My recollection. So there were a lot of games like Crash Bandicoot or whatever that had codes still in them, throwing back to the original NES. That they kind of went that direction. And so in theory, you could just keep track of your codes and just go back. And
and it's true. Yeah, it's true. And you can, it's a short enough game too, where it's really of the era too, where it's not easy to navigate. You're going to replay it a lot. It's the original. It fits all that. But I just Fusion. I don't know. I'm glad that I played it, and I love that I got almost to the end. But because it's such a fascinating thing to play back to back with Prime, because it's such a weird. I feel like it's such a weird Metroid game. Yeah. So, and I mentioned this to Brett in pre-show, but little known fact, the company that I'm blanking on their names that did Samus Returns, the remake, they originally pitched a remake of Fusion that Nintendo said, good idea, but why don't you remake Metroid 2 instead from the Game Boy? So
I will tell you, Samus
But I-
Returns is
they did Dread as well.
Mercury Steam.
Yeah, Mercury. Yep, that's right.
So there you
go. So I'm excited about Dread. But Fusion, and what are some of our other points? We had a few topics.
Oh, the other thing that you had wanted to touch on was the upgrading, being a little bit different and being more about your controls and less about so your
switching
sort of abilities and the modes and the switching between different things that that Prime certainly had, which is a very big contrast.
Yeah, I mean, because I think partially it's because of controls, because you have two buttons for the most part. They didn't use the bumpers, I don't think, at all. And so you're upgrading. You can change your mode to missiles, right? Is that how they do it, or is it on a separate? Now I'm blanking because I just played too much of Metroid 1. But anyway, you're just upgrading your beam is linearly upgraded, right? You're not switching between types of beams,
right?
And largely, I think a lot of that is going to be because of the number of inputs you have, and so you can't really quickly or reliably switch back and forth. Even though we played it for the podcast, I'm blanking on how Super Metroid dealt with all of that. But
Super Metroid similarly had power-ups, but they were sort of like, and some of them were optional. They were more about how those things would path through the world. So like
the wave beam or something.
Like the wave beam would be like literally a sinusoid, across the screen. And then as you get it all the way powered up, I think there were like multiple ones or whatever. So there's like different ways that they were powering those things up.
But could you? I don't remember if you could switch between them.
God, I don't think so. But don't quote me on it at this point. I've got too many.
Or you're making a choice, right? Because there's for instance, in Metroid 1, there's an advantage in the end for having the ice beam, but you could have swapped it for the wave beam and not have it. You're choosing one or the other.
I feel like you could.
Yeah, we'll have to go back. I actually might go back and replay that now that we have
go.
Nintendo Online. Anyway, what I was going to say, though, the weird thing about the structure of Fusion, because it's so, I mean, now that we're talking about it, I'm thinking about it more and more and nerding out more and more, but in a weird designery way. But not only did the linear structure of it, where they were giving you tasks, moving the goalposts, giving you specific tasks, you could still explore once you got some of the locks and keys open. But the other weird thing they did is they did a key card, basically a Doom key card system, where the door access was based on security level.
Yep.
So it's not based on shooting the door open. It's like, oh, did I get the red key card or not? And it's so weird, to decouple, to abstract the security access and to decouple it from your tool set also seems antithetical to Metroid. So it's just like such a bunch of weird decisions. I think the game is still good. I think it's too hard and it's still good, but it's just almost not a Metroid game in some ways to me. But other than in theme, I think the music was really good, and I think the art is great.
Yeah,
it feels like that throwback.
Yeah, it does. So it definitely does. I agree on both of those counts. It's actually funny because I think because of its linearity, but also the fact that Samus is being basically bossed around is the thing that makes it not feel as Metroid-y, which is the same. The same is true of Other M, which we talked a little bit about pre-show. It's not a game I finished because I found that I found it narratively very annoying. Like, it just bothered me. I'm like, wow, this is not how I think of Samus, right, at all. And there's this Commander Adam who is in this game, and that's where he came from. He's in this game as this AI. And it's just like, what are you doing? Like,
it's just weird, yeah.
It's like, oh, you've got this great, strong female character, and you are going to lead her around, by bit and bridle because because why? And like,
Yeah, I think
we've already touched on that, but
we have some suspicions about why that would be.
Yeah, well, I mean, it just makes the games that game and this game feel strange in that way. And this one, I think it's even more mechanically true. I think actually in Other M, you could if you just like muted it, like sometimes when I'm watching baseball, I'll just mute the announcers because I'm like tired of hearing people talk about ads. I just watch the game. And it's like that, where it's like, you know what, if I just turned off this stuff, I could perfectly enjoy this game. If I could just turn off all the narrative bits, like where they're telling me what to think about Samus, or they're changing what I think about Samus.
It's a really good point, because I do feel like one of the tenets of this franchise is her and her. I mean, she's a bounty hunter, for Christ's sake. Like her independence and her, like, she just figures it out. She's that Boba Fett kind of character as well, where she just kind of makes it happen. She's out on her own. She's got her dropship, whatever it's called, and just is problem solving. And that Metroid 1 very much feels like that, of course, right? Because they don't have any sort of context for narrative and stuff. It's just you're just exploring this world, and it's very isolating. Like the fact that you're going to these navigation rooms. To check in with this AI computer, the fact that you're on one space station, which I typically like that kind of stuff, see Dead Space and other examples.
Sure. Right? Event Horizon.
Yeah, like that stuff's great, but it's just kind of is in conflict. I mean, I always appreciate people trying to mess with the formula a little bit and try some different things out. When did this Adam? I'm looking back at the story chronology because that's what I do.
I have to assume he was prior to any of the games,
because there is a manga series that happened before. Well, chronologically
before,
yeah, it came out later, but chronologically is before. Maybe he's in that, because I don't. So there was Prime Hunters, which I forgot about. I don't know what that is. I forget. Is that an?
It might also be a multiplayer game. I don't know what that is.
Action adventure first person shooter game developed by. No, it doesn't say multiplayer. It was on the DS, so I didn't play that.
I didn't play that one either.
I guess I guess my confusion is in Fusion. Who is she taught when she relates the AI to Adam? Who is she? Like, what is she referring to? But I don't know. Maybe it comes up in maybe it's in Zero Mission or no, wouldn't have been in Metroid 2. Anyway, weird.
I don't know. Oh, yeah, I do kind of remember this. There's other bounty hunters in this Metroid Hunters game. Oh, yeah, I never played this one either. I totally forgot about it. Like, I didn't even remember it was a thing. Now I'm like, maybe I could play that too. So
you're saying in Other M, Adam is he's actual alive. Adam is there?
He's there, yeah.
Because chronologically, Fusion happens right after that.
Right.
But Fusion would not know of the existence of Other M.
Right. They worked back.
What
they worked back into like, okay, well, we've got this character. We can describe the relationship between these two people.
Oh, geez,
badly.
Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah, it's just really unfortunate. That is not the team I would have given that that particular. So it's that Ninja
Team
game.
Ninja.
Yeah, Team Ninja. Yeah. He's not the guy I would give that task.
No, was he there at that point though?
I think he was at the beginning. I don't know if he was there throughout development. Can't remember.
No, it's not Sakamoto.
He's the guy with the glasses.
Yeah, Itagaki, right?
Itagaki, that's the one. Yep.
Yeah, no, I think he was gone at that point.
Yeah, certainly by the time it came out, but he might have been there when they started.
That's right. The character's name is Adam Malkovich. No, it's Malkovich. Wait.
Got me, man.
Yeah, no, I was thinking.
You're too deep. You're in. Come back to us, Tim. You're too deep down the rabbit hole. You've been supplanted by Tim X or Tim 10 or Tim Kai. Yeah. Anyway, well, that's enough
story chronology. Anyway,
do you have more to cover here about Metroid Fusion?
No, I think we hit most of them. Yeah, I think we hit them. We hadn't intended to go into it too deep. I was a little frustrated by the hidden stuff. Like sometimes it was a little too hidden. I got stuck actually in a few. I didn't look up hints. Oh, I might have looked up one hint in this one in Fusion. But there were some times when I'm like, the clue was after the fact. I was like, okay, that's the clue. That was like the visual language that I was looking for to tell me I should go through this totally invisible wall.
Oh,
But there were times when I'm like, I don't know where to go.
yeah. There's definitely points where I'm like, okay, it has to be here somewhere. Like there's that there's the room with the big reactor or whatever, and you've like got to clear away all the crufty garbage that's kind of there and like clear that, and I think maybe it grows back or something like that. There's like some weird timing thing. We have to do it exactly right to get up and pop through a gap. That whole like pulling yourself up into the morph ball is cool, but also like not how you think of space.
Yeah, it's a little unfair. That was the only game that the only game that did like crawling on ceilings, clinging on ceilings and walls and things, and pull.
It's the only one I know of, but I
could just thought was kind of a neat advantage.
Yeah, it could be just forgetting other ones. Yeah, that is cool. I like those kind of spots where you're kind of moving it back and forth and shooting things or figuring out where you want to drop or whether you want to drop earlier and things like that. So
I wonder what's considered the most difficult.
Here we go. Rabbit hole.
On air. Interesting.
It's Federation Force because you play against your friends. They're the toughest enemies of all.
This isn't right, is it?
Dread?
No, they say Prime is the hardest.
What?
And then Fusion is the second hardest, and then Zero.
Okay, well that I can believe Fusion's in the top 3.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
I can believe Zero Mission's in the top 3. So I would not put Prime up there. I find it way easier than Fusion.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we played the remastered, so I guess we don't know.
Fair, but I mean,
don't know what tuning they did.
I beat it back in the day too. So
yeah, but you were 6 at the time, so
that's true. I was playing in the kiddie version of the controller or of the system.
Oh, actually, no. I tell you, okay. Sorry. Go ahead. I found a different article, and they say Dread actually is the
toughest. Oh, great.
Yeah. I've heard that about it. Actually, it got criticism for that.
I've heard it is.
But I think they've actually patched it some, so I think
so. We might have a chance.
Yeah. There's no rewind in this one. Yeah.
Okay, let's turn to the mailbag. As always, sir, you can take the first mail. These were sent to devgameclub@gmail.com. Thanks for sending these in.
Okay, from Kyle. Subject: Dev Game Club Origins. Hey, Brett and Tim. It's Kyle Anderor 13 here. Kyle is my real name. Anderor 13, not so much. I have some questions that are a bit different to the usual fare for you today. Apologies if you've already answered them on the pod previously. If you don't, if you have, I don't recall. It's a long email and big question, so I completely understand if they aren't great for pod mailbag time, but they are because I'm doing them now.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, though they could have been edited by our producer.
I have not actually. I've left them all in, and we might want to actually sort of like take them one by one.
Got it. Okay. Number one, I was wondering if you could share a bit about your origin stories, quote unquote, smiley face. What was your first video game you remember playing? What was your experience of games growing up? Did you always expect to get into game development? What was your education, work, background prior to games? How did you get into the industry? What roles have you had, and what led to your changing roles, company, teams? When did you guys meet, and what prompted you to start the pod?
Okay, so a lot of these we have answered. So I'm going to cut off like a whole bunch of them because we talked about all of these. If you go back to our Republic Commando series, we did a weird bonus interview episode where we interviewed each other. Like half of the episode, each of us interviewed the other, and some of the stuff of like, you know, maybe not the first game we remember playing, but like, you know, we've kind of sprinkled through some of that stuff throughout, and getting into game development, how we got in, education and background and stuff like that. So all of that I think was all there, and how we got into the industry, I think we covered there too. But what roles we've had and what we kind of covered that there, but we can probably quickly kind of give a refresher on roles we've had, and then when we met is definitely covered there. But I guess we can say, yeah, we met on Starfighter, and then what prompted us to start the pod. So, what roles have you had, and what led you to changing those roles, or companies or teams or whatever, Tim?
It's all a blur. Yeah, I started. We probably talked about this some in that series, but yeah, I started in QA, and then from there I went into level design, and then from there, kind of went through various versions of design, from gameplay design, lead design, creative direction, etc. And so, yeah, that was my. I mean, to be honest, from a design perspective, at least of my age, it's a pretty traditional sort of flow. And I mean, as far as like what led me, I was a big Lucas fan, and so that's why I really wanted to work there originally. And that was, internal studios of that size, where I was there for 9.5 years, and then 2.5 years, or something like that. So it was like collectively over 11 or something. But it often, when you're at one company for that long, it often has a lot to do with what the company's doing. So I tried to always work on things that I was, wanted to and interested in. But sometimes, it's what the company has as well. I got very fortunate. I was very lucky because I got to work on a lot of cool stuff there, but it really just opportunity was a lot of it, right? So getting to know people at the studio, and so yeah, and wanting to do different things in my design career. So if when it was time, when I felt like I wanted to kind of move into a leadership role, Starfighter happened to be kind of there and needing that, and so that's why I went over there from getting out of first and third person games. And being a fan of flight action. So, but leaving companies, that's also opportunity and stuff like that. I actually left the industry for a little while, and then kind of came back in because I really wanted to work on Tomb Raider, the Tomb Raider reboot. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, for me, I started in '98. I started off as a senior programmer, my first job ever in the industry. At that time, it was because of my salary ask, because LucasArts was weird at the time. Like, oh, we can only hire him as a senior programmer because he wants this much. And, very, very, very strange, that company. That company,
Oh, yeah.
So many strengths and some really big blind spots. But yeah, I mean, it was an old company. It was there from pretty early days. And so a lot of stuff kind of grew up around companies like that, especially of that size. So yeah, for me, I mean, the same thing. I chased roles based on opportunities. There were, sort of field promotions, I mean, going from Starfighter, I went from being a senior programmer on my first ever game to a lead programmer on my second ever game. And then lead programmer on Republic Commando with a canceled game in between, that I worked on for a couple of years. A year and a half, something like that. Game timelines were shorter then. I came east. I did some consulting, mostly just for the flexibility. My kids were young. I didn't want to be driving back and forth an hour to where I had been working when I moved here. I was going through some life changes at the same time. So, and then I ended up at Bethesda. Somebody from LucasArts, actually, who Jonathan Williams, who had been, I guess, I think he'd been in the tools department and maybe at one point led the tools department towards the end of my time there. But he had moved back east to be near family in Virginia and was working at Bethesda. And he called me up a few times like, hey, you should come, check this out. They were actually I probably shouldn't say that. Anyway,
for the record, though, when you moved back east, the first thing I said to you was you should move it. You should work at Bethesda. And you're like,
yeah, they
nah, I
lowballed
don't
me.
really. Oh, that's right.
Yeah, the salary wasn't there. I was like, well, yeah, I can do better over here. So, but they came back when I went to them the second time. They were much more forthcoming, and they had some success, and we're about to have a bigger success with Fallout 3. So then I was a lead systems guy, which was funny because I had been I had done some systems work on Jedi Starfighter because nobody else was there to do it, but I hadn't really done that as kind of my main focus. And that's when I kind of broadened out a lot of my skills to include sort of some very low level, closer to the metal type stuff, which was really, really fun. And I had some really good up and coming younger team members working under me, but also one very senior programmer who I learned a ton about. I had been out of the sort of mainstream for a few years, and in that time the systems had become I guess the PS2 was multi-core, but it kind of felt a little different, felt more like a coprocessor. And then with the Xbox 360 and the PS3 in particular, they were literally multi-processor machines where you were trying to use them all at once. And I learned so much about how to manage that from somebody who was working for me there, who was a really, really great engineer, maybe the best engineer I've ever worked with. I was there for 5 years, and I frankly burned out. I also sort of left the industry in a way. I mean, I took a year where I basically did nothing. Played a lot of video games. Finally got all of the stars in a Mario game, and went to do some teaching after that, and then some more consulting and some indie work, and then of course have come back to be a lead technical guy at Tim's thing. So that's my route. What prompted us to start the pod? Well, Tim had the idea, hey, we should do like a kind of a book club, but for games in like 2013. And I said, okay, sure. Whenever you're ready. And then like years later, he's like, I'm like, we can still do that podcast thing you want to do. And here we are. So, yeah.
I talk about this from time to time, but it was a stolen idea from another podcast that I listen to and am a big fan of, Rebel FM.
Right.
They used to do. I don't think they do them anymore. I haven't actually listened in a while, but yeah, they used to do a book club, quote unquote book club version. And I mean, big podcast listener here myself, to gaming podcasts, but I think almost all of them are generally sort of journalism based,
right?
Which is appropriate, and it's great to have those outlets doing this. And I go back to all the way back to the One Up era, that really I think were one of the trailblazers, and GameSpot. But there just wasn't a lot of developer centric ones, and it just felt like there was a possible opportunity to talk about it from our perspective and see if anyone cared.
Yeah, the developer ones always seem to be very like limited around a particular game. I feel like Insomniac maybe did one once.
Oh yeah,
or Looking Glass, not Looking Glass, but something. Maybe it was the System Shock 2.
Irrational,
I think did one as well, which was a lot about like talking to different team members and stuff, and that was super cool actually because you got to talk to lots of different departments, who were all working together. So they're all working together, and you like got the sense of how they all fit together. But nobody ever kind of like, as developers and players, looked at games, the way we do. So.
Yeah. In fact, in his next paragraph, he mentioned Soren Johnson, who
we've had on
and his podcast is a pretty infamous one too for that.
For sure.
That sort of the deep dives like we try to do.
Yeah, and they're pure interview, like only the interview, and they don't kind of like they don't talk about one game, maybe talk about many games and things like that.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, that's where he drew all those questions. We can skip ahead to number 2, the number 2 question.
Okay, for Brett. Yeah. Have you found keeping up with the ever-changing state of game technology and how have you found, sorry, uh, game technology and programming? Is it something you've navigated and picked up on your own during your career, or have you had to upskill, quote unquote, through courses, etc.? Or is it just like my development experience and mostly through Googling when old approaches don't work anymore? I'd love to hear more about your own experiences and takeaways from using different technologies. Are you an off the shelf engine kind of guy or write your own engine kind of guy? Question mark and happy face.
So, I mean, the way I keep up is both through a number of things. I mean, throughout my career, ever since blogs have been a thing, and Gama Sutra, formerly Gama Sutra, now Game Developer, and Game Developer Magazine. Like, I've always had those kind of industry things that I read, but I also just look at the games that are coming out and then are popular, whether or not I have the time to play them in any depth. I'm just kind of aware what people are doing. And I'll always like read the GDC. I mean, for years I went to GDC. The last one I think I went to was like around 2015 or so. But I'll always just kind of read topics from them or see what the videos are that are coming out, just to know like what are the things I don't know about that are kind of not in my area of expertise. I've never been a graphics guy, right? I've never shipped anything, in the graphics side of things under my games. None of the games I've worked on have anything that have to do with rendering that came from me, which is funny because my graduate work was in graphics. So it's very weird that I kind of just totally
but that was like 1954. So like,
right.
How applicable could that be?
Yes, I mean it's tough to render Pong in 54. So yeah, I basically keep up with those and kind of am generally aware, of like, hey, okay, I should probably know about this buzzword. I'm seeing this occasionally mentioned. What's that about? But deferred because I'm not
rendering,
deferred rendering, or even fixed function pipeline, which we mentioned in the sort of GameCube era, so GameCube and the original Xbox and PlayStation 2. Although I don't even think on the PlayStation 2 they called it that. It was just whatever. But the Xbox called it a fixed function pipeline because it was so close to a PC. So things like that, I mean, I just kind of pick up. Like I've written shaders. Actually, so that's not true. I did work on a little indie title for the Xbox One on XBLA called 60-second shooter Prime with Jamie Fristrom, who had originally written it for the Vita. Because it was all natively coded, he could port it to anything. Like it wasn't like a Unity game or an Unreal game or something that hadn't been put on, hadn't targeted those platforms yet. So I helped him port that, and so I guess technically have some shader code in that I wrote for the lightning effect. Maybe I can't remember what else I did. Maybe the trails, which have a small bug in them. So yeah, I'm not a perfect graphics programmer, but yeah, I basically like keep my ear to the ground about that stuff, mostly through blogs. I do follow a couple bloggers who write about specifically graphic stuff, even though I know I'll read it and there'll be a point at which I'm like, okay, here's a bunch of math I'm not going to understand, but I'm going to pick up the sort of the gist of it so that I know. A lot of being kind of at the top of a technical group is, first of all, knowing enough that you can have a conversation with the different people who work for you, in their different specialties, is one thing that's really important. But then the second thing is being able to ask intelligent questions of them, so that you kind of, even just to hire them, you have to be able to like assess that they know what they're talking about. And so you need to know to some degree what you're talking about, to do so. So even though I'm not a specialist in anything in particular, I find it easy to pick up different things. Part of that is just at this point, I have a ton of experience. I am not fluent in many programming languages, but I have used tons of programming languages because I just have these expectations of like, well, there must be a way to do this in this language because every language must have something similar. So like every time I use Python, I have to hunt and peck like, what's the weird there's some weird different idiom for this in this language. Oh, right, it's this. Okay. And then I just remember it and kind of like, okay, now I can code in Python again. But, I do a lot of that sort of stuff. As far as off the shelf versus write your own, I love to write my own stuff, but really only for small projects. For large projects, it's just you have to support too many people to be able to do it on your own. And I don't think it's a good use of my time, the kind of person I am. And I would rather I'm super efficient working in somebody else's engine because I don't have to do a lot of boilerplate kind of work. So I can really do things like prototyping really, really quickly as long as there's enough guts there for me to work with. So anyway, finally, question 3.
Well, are you able to share anything at all in caps, about what you're currently working on? I'm sure listeners would be keen to hear any details at all, genre, setting, vision, etc. You have any notion of when you're expected to release? How's it all going?
It's funny he says keen, because we're working on the Commander Keen remaster.
Remaster specifically, not a sequel.
Nope. We're just straight up remastering Commander Keen.
Remastering Commander.
No,
that's
a joke.
Strong business model for that.
I will defer to my boss on that one.
Boy.
To how much I'm able to say.
No, yeah, we're not there yet. We can't wait, of course, to share what we're doing, but yeah, we can't talk about anything yet. Soon, maybe, but yeah.
All I will say about that is that if there comes a time soon when we are talking about it, I will put the link to whatever article it is in the Discord as soon as it's available.
Nice.
So as long as you're in there, I'm plugging the Discord. That's what I do.
Nice. I think that's all for now. Thanks for reading, Kyle, formerly known as Vermin. Oh, what?
Yep, Vermin.
Hey, that's a plot twist at the end of this email. What the heck? Now I should have read this whole thing with an accent.
There you go.
And I would not have been able to, but...
Vermin the Swepper or something like that? What was it? He had some weird...
oh my god, I just called him Vermin, so now I'm blanking. I apologize.
I think it is Vermin the Swepper. I think it's something like that.
Yeah.
You should check out Vermin because he's in our... Well, he's not there as Vermin, but Kyle's there in the Discord as well. I have another plot twist.
Oh, no.
You may remember that we had an email a while back called Hate Mail.
Yeah, that was a good one.
We have a subject here that is Love Mail. From Luke, the same original author. Hello, Brett and Tim.
Uh-oh.
It is I, the author of hopefully your only hate mail. Thanks for reading it. So recently, I have taken the 350-something episodes of dev game training you two have given out and have begun development on my own game.
Ooh.
Really, Brett's random comment some time ago about RPG Maker being a great quote-unquote expression tool is what really got me going. I would like to give you both my heartfelt thanks for the years of wisdom and entertainment. I'm sure I speak for a lot of your listeners. So my question is, now that I am developing in my own free time, I have to say, the burnout is already real.
Oh, no.
I'm a goal-oriented person, so I stay on task that way. But as I'm working on art assets or badly fumbling around JavaScript, I get so unfocused. I can only imagine what the pressure feels like when your livelihood depends on it. So what I'm asking you both is, how do you keep going while you are actively at work developing? Do you stand up and walk around every few minutes? Do you listen to music, podcasts? Should I start smoking? Appreciate any real tangible help you can provide. Hope you are well. Thanks, Luke. Yeah, that's a big one.
Oh, man.
How do you keep going? As we both confessed in the last mail, we both quit for a little while at one point.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. I mean, two things come to mind. I mean, Luke's. I'm really happy for you, Luke, that you are venturing forth and stay strong. You can do it, but we of course understand the burnout. One thing that comes to mind, Because, like you said, I mean, it's the usual thing of any creative endeavor, for me at least, and for anybody, where you have, deadlines, things you have to do, business side of it, whatever, right? So you kind of have to keep moving forward. But I guess this is kind of an obvious answer, so I don't feel like it's very revelatory. But for me, one thing that I have as a coping mechanism is, because I'm basically, for me, I sort of hit different versions of writer's block all the time, every day. There's some like mental wall I hit for some topic. But what I try to do as a coping mechanism that I've developed over the years is context shifting can be distracting, but for me, it often is very helpful, because if in one context, I hit a wall, my brain tells me that, well, we have to keep going. Something has to move forward. And so I shift to something else that's as different from the previous thing as I can get it, to break out of it and to keep at least one of the balls moving forward. Because especially at our company, we're not that big. So there's constantly different things to do and different contexts happening. And if I stick on one for too much, I will get burnt out. For too long, and I will get burnt out, or I will hit a wall. And so I kind of shift around as much as is possible, because sometimes you just got to get some particular thing done and you can't shift around, so you just have to push through. But that has helped me. And to be honest, I will admit, I am fortunate and have the luxury of having both the curse and the luxury of having various things to worry about. So I do have the ability to context shift, because there are different contexts, and some people are specialists, and they just they work on really go deep in fewer things. So you'll have to ask them that question. The other one, I just stare off into space sometimes, but funny enough, eventually I snap out of it, and and I get back to work. So. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, the burnout is real, and when you're doing it as a hobby, it can be even realer in some ways, because of course you have limited time to put a lot of pressure on yourself to make the most of that time. And what I would say about that, I mean, I'll get back to my sort of own techniques, but a little bit of routine goes a long way, and patting yourself on the back for even, if it's a hobby thing, like 15 minutes of work, an hour of work, like whatever, like a minimum bar is for you, and set that really low, honestly, and be good with that. I'm a person who, here at the, more than a couple decades into a career of programming, is like, I want to learn how to draw, like finally actually learn how to draw, and be decent. And the thing that is working is saying, you know what, as long as I draw 10 minutes a day, every day, it doesn't even have to be good, but I have to do the 10 minutes, is the thing that keeps me going, and improving, for that matter. So it's those sorts of things I think are really, really beneficial. And that can be hard with hobbies, to find that consistent time, because we tend to be like, well, I'll do a marathon over the weekend because family's out of town, or whatever, I have the time, so let me just pour a ton in, but be okay with 15 minutes. I will be honest that I don't think I've ever been on a project, except maybe Jedi Starfighter, which was so short and so sort of intense for me that I didn't have the luxury. But I think on every project I've been on, I've had a period of doldrums, I call them, like in I think that's from the Phantom Toll Booth, where it's just like, like I worked on an indie game where I got to a point where I was like, okay, I've got all the systems working, but now we got to put data into those systems. And I'm just not a tools guy. I don't love writing them, but I was it. I was the only engineer. It's like, I've got to write the tools to put the data in the game. And I had been, I had another way to do it. Like there was like a scripting language basically, but that was like monotonous and not appropriate for the type of game we were trying to build. And so I came to this point where it's like, oh, now I've got to build the tools. And just, there were weeks where I think if I look back, I'd be like, wow, I was embarrassingly unproductive in those weeks. But at a certain point, I basically spent a lot of that time staring into space, as Tim points out, because at the end of that like doldrum period, when I was finally like, okay, enough of this, like snap out of it, get to work.
Yeah.
I had actually done a lot of mental thinking, as opposed to physical thinking.
I was gonna say
where when I actually finally hit the ground, I like hit the ground running and went like, okay, I know what I'm actually building. It just took me a long time to get there, where it's just kind of like in my brain meandering and like not feeling productive for a long time and feeling bad about it, to be honest. And sometimes you need that time, to be honest. Sometimes you just need the time.
And that's what I kind of mean about staring into space. Yeah. Like, I don't beat yourself up over those unproductive days or weeks. I do think they're valuable. I mean, not to be cheesy about the creative process or whatever, but I think, and I include programming, et cetera, that the creation process, like the downtime is as important as the uptime. And I think that ebb and flow is really critical. And I think, in a way, like Brett said, it's okay to celebrate those too, because your brain's probably working something out. It's like a puzzle. It's like playing an adventure game. You know, it's like I'm at the bar in Space Quest, and I'm like, I just don't know what to do here. And then you come back 2 days later and like, oh, I got it.
Yeah.
You know, something your brain will figure it out. I did think of another one that's kind of, if you're done, sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Well, as you were talking, another one that isn't always applicable, but I do find both humbling but also valuable in moving forward and keeping the burnout a little bit at bay. And the third thing I'm forgetting, but gain perspective. And what I mean by that is, and I know you're going to not want to do this, but fight the urge, share what you're doing with somebody else.
Mm.
And that person, even if they give you critical feedback, you know, hopefully you find somebody who's, you know, as honest as they can be with you. That most of the time for me, it kind of rejuvenates me, and kind of, even if what I'm doing is terrible and it's like, why are you showing me this? There's usually, for me at least, and maybe it's just my personality type, I get a lot out of that interaction, you know, especially if you're on your own trying to do this as a hobby. I think you might be surprised at how bringing some fresh perspective into it and having a discussion about whatever it is, like I'll end a day just crushed. And then I wake up the next day and the first meeting or first interaction I have with the team completely rejuvenates me, because I'm like, oh yeah, right. We're all in this, you know, we're doing this. This is a thing. And I know you're by yourself, Luke, potentially, but bring some people in. They don't have to do work for you, but maybe they have an opinion. Maybe you get a tidbit of something from them, because for me, I really get in my head too quickly and I stay in there. And you got to get out.
I'm an engineer. I live there.
Yeah.
I do all that mental thinking.
Clearly the mental thinking is the key. But I just, you know, get out of your head when you can and get some fresh perspective.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of along those lines, one of the things that I find a really useful tool, often for design, but even for engineering, which is, you know, kind of worlds apart in some ways, is I'll stop, you know, when I'm a little stuck and just like ask why, and usually multiple times till I get to something kind of grander, more important than the sort of immediate, well, why am I doing this? Like, why am I doing this thing that I'm doing right now? And that I'll have an answer to that question. It'll be very like tactical or like immediate and kind of pointless. Like, okay, yeah, sure. That's why you're doing this. You're debugging this because there's a bug. Oh, duh. Great question. Why? Okay. Well, but why? You know, it's like, well, because that bug is obscuring this cool part of our game. And then it's like, oh, okay. Well, why is it obscuring that part of the game? And it's like, well, we're not getting the feedback from this, or like, you know, whatever. These sort of chains of asking why kind of raise you up to a level where you have a much different view of the problem you're working on. It may remotivate you. Sometimes it actually just makes you go, oh, wow, I don't even need to do this thing. Like, we just need to show this information in a different way, or whatever it is. If it's, you know, it's really hard to like give a brass tacks exact example of something like that, but that is a thing I've done many times of just like saying, okay, I'm a little stuck, in what I should be doing, and just asking myself, well, why am I stuck? Even like what? Okay, well, I'm stuck because I don't know what to do because I've got these multiple avenues I could pursue, or it's like, well, why are these different avenues important? Like, why are they of equal importance? Why? I mean, just keep asking why questions, and that will engage a different part of your brain as well than the problem-solving brain in some ways, but will feed back into the problem-solving brain in a really useful way. I also, at this point, in having read a million sort of books about productivity and whatever, have a million sort of different ways to do things. So it's like, oh, you know what? I need to do Pomodoro now because I need that kind of focused, do this many tasks, bang, 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 versus some other type of scheduling. Like I just have a to-do list that I prioritize, or, what I just have a million different ways I organize my work. And sometimes I just need a different way to organize my work to make myself work, which is just how my brain works. So I don't know if that's of any value at all. So anyway, I think it's great, Luke. You are among many we've had email from. We're going to have actually an email. I'd like to get to a couple more emails that is from somebody else who's working on their own game. And we've had a couple of those recently. So it's just always great and heartening and I don't know, humbling to hear from folks who have listened to our podcast and are like, and you know what? I decided to make my own game. And that's really special. And, whether or not it works out and you finish it or not, the try is a big thing. So appreciate it, Luke.
Yeah. Agreed. You want me to go to the next one?
Yeah, go to another one. Bang them out.
Okay. Metroid Prime and disguised linearity. Very ironic.
Yes.
This is being talked about. Fusion was not disguised linearity. Friend of the cast, Baron. Hello there. Hi, Brett and Tim. I finished Metroid Prime this weekend, and it was amazing. It was as amazing as the first time I played it. Metroid Prime was the first FPS I ever played, and the first Metroid 2. Wow, that's cool. One of the things that I noticed even more this one playthrough, and this applies to Dread 2, it's the way they design the levels. So after you get a new item, key, ability, you will definitely backtrack, advance to the location that you need to go to next. Yeah, they do a good job at that. It might not seem like it at first, but you will only get out of track if you purposely go too far out of the way to explore instead of following the crumbs of new color doors, vantage points, or riding the conveniently newfound elevator. I remember this being way more extensive and confusing back in the day, but I managed to get all but one energy tank. Yay, me too. Without ever actually looking for them, feeling like a straight line at some points. My question for you gentlemen is, how hard is it to find that sweet spot where you don't handhold your player, but your level design does it for you? And do you have any particular games that come to mind? Anyway, I'm so happy you guys decided to play this game, this gem of a game, and looking forward to the next one. Friend of the podcast, Baron, my real name.
Baron, another common Discord folk.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll have to think. I actually read this mail and was like, God, man, other games like this, like this that kind of like naturally lead you to the next thing. I think Ueda's games tend to be that way for me. Probably less so Shadow of the Colossus than the other two because each Colossus is kind of its own thing in a way. And there's so few mechanics in that one, but in general, he's one that I think of, and I think a lot of that has to do with his sort of minimalist design and just taking so many things away that it lays bare what's really important in his games, and it makes me just saying that, want to play Last Guardian again because that's the only one I've only played once. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, I'm racking my brain. Like,
Doing some of that mental thinking.
yeah, I'm doing some mental thinking, but it's not very successful. It seems like it should be easier to answer this question.
Well, I mean, I think that the Zelda, the level design in the Zelda, like Hyrule Field, we talked a lot about that on that.
Yeah.
In that chain of episodes, like that they do a really good job, and probably the 2D Zelda as well. So I guess what's that, Link to the Past?
Yeah. The Zelda games, yeah, for sure. They're world structure, because he's really talking about world design in a lot of ways too, like the macro, elements of when you're getting what, when, and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm trying to think of a little bit more like Metroid Prime. It's not an open world. It's more of like a dense hub and spoke kind of situation. And so I'm thinking of maybe arcane games, but they're not really exactly the same within the levels themselves. I think they are. They don't.
Right.
That's why I mentioned world design versus level design.
Yeah.
I think as far as level design goes, arcane is some of the best in the industry. I'm talking about Dishonored, Prey. I still haven't played Deathloop, so that's on me. But
it's on my list.
Yeah, mine too. But man, and I feel like Looking Glass in general was always, good at that. Lock and key wise, though, I'm thinking back to System Shock 2, and I guess they didn't really do much of that. It still was. More access. It was more access.
Yeah, one game that comes to mind that we played that I wouldn't normally think of it this way, but I think actually fits the bill is, and it's funny because it's an RPG, it's all over the place, is Planescape.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's there's a sort of inevitability to where you're going. It feels like, of course, whenever you look back on the choices you made, it feels inevitable and like there was a one path through or whatever. But like that game, I think, feels really bigger than it is in some ways, partly because it's so strange, right? The game is so strange in and of itself, but there is kind of a natural path through that game that you would not think is there, I think, approaching it, which is, I think, one of the magical things about that game is that it feels like you picked this one path through the game, but there were like billions of others that you could have picked, and there really isn't. Like there's only the one way through for the nameless one, but because they didn't build all those other levels or all those other maps, I should say. But it does feel like that they're there because of the setting and because of him and like him as a character and like how mechanically how he levels up and things like that. Like that, I think that game feels that way a lot. Yeah, that's one I would pick. Certainly of those we've played.
Yeah. I mean, I apologize, Brandon. I really feel like there should be better answers here. Of course, we can talk about Castlevania. That's easy, low-hanging fruit.
Sure.
But but I actually wanted to talk about. I haven't gotten deep enough in, and it's sort of now it's going to be part of my sort of Metroidvania hole that I'm falling down apparently, because I've gone back to oh my gosh, I'm blanking the name.
Dead Cells.
The bug.
Hollow Knight.
Hollow Knight. Yeah, I'm going back to Hollow Knight, and I wanted to comment on his point about how hard it is to do this.
Yeah,
how hard it is to design the world design and level design to achieve this. Because I found it now that I'm playing these Metroid games back, around the time I'm going back to Hollow Knight. That game is very, very good, and I'm not trying to be critical of it because it's excellent, and I'm sure it opens up more. But I've been surprised at how little I expected there to be more of that kind of, as Baron was saying, it disguised linearity as far as like going back to areas and being drawn to go back to areas. I think that's the key point in Prime is the way that they structured basically retraversal, which is often boring in games. You know, they make you retread.
It feels like they're stretching it. You know,
feels like they're stretching it. But if like you said, if you follow the breadcrumbs in Prime, they are stretching it, but they've also rewarded you for retraversal because you have now a thing that will allow you to do something that you couldn't before on that retraversal. And I
like
think
the
I'm
jump
just
boots.
yeah. Well, the funny thing about us neither of us getting the jump boots is that clearly that is very augmentation on your ability set.
Yeah.
Because we finished the game fine without them.
Yeah.
With the exception of maybe like you said, Ridley. But
I think Ridley would have been way easier.
Yeah, totally. It could jump maybe right over Ridley. But so it's just I mean it is very hard. I have not made a game like this, so I can't say how hard it is for real, but from a aficionado of this structure and this topic, it seems terribly difficult to me.
It's very hard. Yeah. One thing I will say is, I think Hollow Knight will open up. So keep at it.
Okay.
There's definitely a moment at Hollow Knight where I went, oh man. And for me, I think the thing.
But will it pull you back to like earlier sections?
I believe it will.
Intentionally?
Yes.
To drag you through those spaces?
I think so. Although I did not finish that game. Partly because
I'm going to keep going. Yeah.
I mean, it was giving me serious carpal tunnel, and I was streaming that game, and when I stream, I feel like there's a little lag to the TV because you're through a device, right? I don't know if that's true, but it feels like it. And there was one maneuver, one like jump down. It's another crab-handed game, right? Where it's like, oh, you've got to like do this thing with your hand that's super uncomfortable. And there was just one thing I could not do well and was super frustrating. Yeah. And at a certain point I was just like, okay, my elbows hurt. I need to put this game down. I was very busy working on something else at the time. So that was part of it too. But anyway.
One thing that to his point that Prime, and I think if we think about it, we're boiling it down to, I'm sure there's great indie games like Hollow Knight. I think Ori, maybe in the Blind Forest, I've heard similarly good things about, but I haven't played those. I'm a little worried they're too hard for me. But what we're really talking about is Nintendo.
Not for you. You played Dark Souls with a butter knife.
Well, I was going to bring up Dark Souls, but you brought it up anyway. So they're more shortcuts though, right? They're not really lock and key specific. As far as world structure, I still think their world structure has great revelatory moments in it, right? Because you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm here. But it's not the same thing. But and those, some of those great trailblazing indie games aside, I think we're really talking about Nintendo here, right? Like they're the ones that have kind of mastered this. And the thing that I love about Prime, specifically to his point, is not only if you follow the breadcrumbs and we've talked about this from time to time, trust the developers, right? Trust the developers, and they will, and the players will trust you, and vice versa. Rather, you will go on largely you'll be dragged through, like you said, the path that will allow you to leverage the things you've gotten. However, they also give you the option to break off of that path at any time if you've gotten a new tool and want to go back to a place where you remember there being a half pipe or whatever, even though they're not dragging you to that half pipe at this particular time. So my point is you're going to get to have your cake and eat it too, because there were times in Prime when I knew if I just kind of went to the next breadcrumb, I was going where they wanted me to, but I kind of, I just felt like it. I went to another section they didn't want me to do, and I got a couple things from it. Even though I would have eventually gone back to that other section because it was player motivated, because I chose to do it, that empowerment. And that's where I think Fusion actually sort of failed compared to Prime. And it was really interesting playing it back to back because there's a few doors, I would say maybe even like less than 10 or maybe even less than 6,
Yeah, I think you're
doors
right. Yeah.
that, I just got a new security level. If I go all the way back to whatever, section 3, I can open this one red door. But it's like not worth it at all. And it's
Yeah.
not anywhere as
It
dense
does.
as
It's
Prime.
not even that it's not worth it. It doesn't even feel worth it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
No.
you just are like, oh, what am I gonna get out of that? Like,
Yeah. You're not motivated.
and in
So,
Metroid Prime, it feels like I might find the super missile equivalent power up to my power beam, or my whatever, whatever. I don't I already forgot the name of the damn weapons, but like, I'm gonna find the ice spreader if I go back, and I did take notes because I was like, I'm not gonna make this mistake again. I still made that mistake because there were things I didn't write down because
like the super boots.
I'll remember these. The funny thing is, I was sure I went through that door when I watched that video. I'm like, I'm so sure I went over there.
Yeah,
I can't believe that I did.
It's definitely a hidden in
because you
plain
can get
sight
there pretty
problem.
early.
Yeah. Well,
So-
I could have gotten there right at that place where I got stuck because I
Yeah.
couldn't do that half pipe.
Yep.
I could have gotten it right after that.
I'm pretty sure I actually went up there and fell.
And you're like, oh, no, I don't want to go.
And I fell. I was like, never mind. I'll just go to the next thing. I don't want to go back around. It was probably
The doors in that hub are a little bit confusing. I definitely got
they
them
are.
mixed up a lot. So
Yeah.
But if I would have used the map, that's how I was often.
I can't
sure
believe
was-
I can't believe I never went into that room because it doesn't have like a super special door or anything like that. And actually, I think that's part of the reason.
Yeah,
Is that because it's just a regular, ordinary door? I just was like, oh, I must have done that already. So
yeah,
yeah.
Wild.
It's that's wild. All right, I'm gonna do one more. I know we're getting long here, but I'm gonna do one more.
Your
because
funeral.
It's about somebody who's made a game. Sync up with me here afterwards. He gave us a beta key, and we'll announce his game, when he's ready, because it's a few weeks off. But we have a beta if you want it, sir. This is subject memories from the past from Jarko Savula. About the podcast, it's been interesting to listen to episodes about GoldenEye and Metroid Prime. I don't really have memories from those because I was one of those guys that tried to control an FPS with a controller and decided it's just horrible and went back to worship my PC. Mm-hmm. It's funny how now 95% of my gaming time is spent on consoles, and I like playing with a controller from my couch. Do you have examples of games that you didn't get at the time, but later realized were important stepping stones in the evolution of games? My real name is Jarko Savula. So congratulations, Jarko, on being close to your release. We'll announce that here if you want to send another email when you're close and tell us all about it. Because I have or will have shared a code with Tim.
Yeah, amazing. Congrats. That's good luck.
It's terrific.
I do. It's called Dark Souls.
Yeah, that's funny. I mean, I did get that. I mean, not Dark Souls specifically.
For me, it was Demon Souls.
Yeah,
I started
Demon
Souls. I was like, what the heck?
Actually, for me, it's Resident Evil.
Oh, interesting.
I played Resident Evil. Gosh, I don't know. I feel like I played. I didn't get it when I first played it, right? So I had it for the GameCube, and Nathan Martz, who worked with us on Republic Commando, I said to him, the most horrifying thing about this game is its save system, and which was just me being nasty, but at the time I was definitely still mostly a PC player. Maybe I'd moved more towards console, and kind of gotten used to kind of restrained save systems, constrained, I should say. You can only save in these places, whatever, Final Fantasies 7 through 9, those sorts of things. And I definitely remember being like, man, I just don't have time for this. But while we were finishing Republic Commando, I was going home at, 11 at night or later and being like, I'll just cool down with a little bit of Resident Evil. After initially bouncing off of it, because I was like, well, I can't just save whenever I want. Instead, I'd go home when I was too tired and really should have been in bed, and just play until, I found the next save room and be like, okay, I guess I'll save and go to bed now. Whatever time that was, because, even when you are crunching, that it's just so weird. I still have this thing, we play D&D and we play it on Sunday nights, and it goes till like after 10 my time, and it takes me till like midnight to come down. Like I just, my brain is just so engaged, and that's also true when I program. Is like I'm so engaged in what I'm doing that if I do it after a certain hour, I'm just gonna still be in that mode for another. Like it takes me well into my evening to kind of like disconnect.
All the mental thinking is just
that mental thinking, man. It's because it doubles up like that. Yeah. It really ties you down.
Mother brain. It all comes back to mother brain.
It's your freaking mother brain that's in your head with a weird face on it, apparently from Metroid Prime.
Shoot it with the missiles.
Yeah, and the ice beam. So I definitely totally lost my train of thought there. Thank you.
Sorry. No, you're talking about Resident Evil, and you're
right. No, so that was a game where once I finally got it, and I started getting to sections where I was like, "Oh my god, what the heck was that?" When you first meet Lisa, maybe, and some of the additions I think they made for the GameCube version, like the faster zombies and things like that, it really like started to get its claws into me. But at first blush, I was like, what is this? What a throwback, not a thing anymore. But it had a lot still to teach me, I think.
Yeah. I was a latecomer to Resident Evil too, Resident Evil as well. So I understand that one in particular because it was definitely like I don't really see it. But other than my Demon Souls one, which I, is a bit snarky, and we just like to play the drinking game every episode.
Yeah,
that one is a really genuine one for me because
I'm on my fifth martini.
I do feel like it was very much like a binary. Like I don't get it, oh I get it, and I'm really happy that I get it. The other one that you won't see Brett might see coming, but it's a little game that we might play someday. It's a little game that I like to call Trespasser.
Oh God.
That was definitely like a WTF, like what the heck, and then it was brilliant. That game is something else.
I
has
do
had
think
more of an impact on gaming than people realize.
It's a game we should totally play. I mean, I totally don't disagree with it.
Gotcha.
I just honestly don't look forward to it.
Because
I know it can be so painful. Because of what it can't quite do.
Yeah.
I have another one that I totally didn't get, and this would have been around the time Skyrim was in mid development. So was Minecraft. Oh
yeah, that's a pretty good one actually. Yeah.
I'm a person I like a lot of structure. I like you to tell me what I'm supposed to be doing.
Oh, I remember conversations with you about this when it came out. You're like, "Where's the quest? I don't need the quest to go do."
Hey, now,
just go.
I did not say it that way.
Okay,
unless I was, really mentally thinking.
Okay, yeah, you're definitely mentally thinking.
But that was a game, and actually, I mean, Bethesda games in general too. So it was like I was in this mix of like, here's another game. Although at that point, I think Fallout 3 was the one that finally kind of tripped it for me. Although I did play Oblivion, Morrowind originally I bounced off of, but Minecraft, I'm not a builder, and in fact I actually prefer something like Dragon Quest Builders, where it's like do this thing. Here's a bunch of things to do, that you need to get done in order to move on. I really like that amount of structure, but the sort of just like, hey, go pick up a bunch of stuff, and by the way, you need to use a wiki to figure out what other things you can build.
I love it.
Was very totally opaque, and I don't think I had the energy for it at the time. I played it later.
It's daunting. I mean, it's a daunting way to think about games, and I think that's where sort of it's both its trailblazing thing, but unbeknownst to itself, because I don't think it really knew what it was doing at the time, but also its strength. That it's also its weakness, right? Because their games were meant to be so structured at that time, and Minecraft comes out and creates sort of the survival genre. And I think I mentioned I'm a big Valheim fan, and also that has a little more structure, but sometimes I'm just in there chopping down trees and building a house for no reason. It's like
Yeah. So I mean, I think that Dwarven Fortress is kind of similar in that regard.
Yeah.
Although that one I sort of like, it was more the opacity of the interface and not what the game was. So it's like the interface was so opaque. Whereas Minecraft was not. Like, I could see all the things I could do. At least, I mean, you can't do much, I guess, when you start, but it's like, oh yeah, I can sort of punch trees and get some wood, or punch some dirt and get some dirt, and like, okay, like, what am I going to do with that? And that was a game that I think YouTube culture really helped.
Mm-hmm. It was a sense of community discovery too in the early days when it was in alpha, right? Where, because there were no recipes, people were all this. I remember vividly because I think we were on Republic Commando at the time, where people were discovering things, and that was fairly.
I don't think it was on Republic Commando.
No,
I don't think it was out by then. No, I don't. 2004.
I remember. Well, I'm talking about alpha. Alpha, like I remember this. I remember the desk I was sitting in, and that would have been. But maybe, we have to look it up. But anyway, that unstructured, like, we're not going to tell you how to do something.
Yeah.
Mentality,
sure.
which became almost like
Java Edition Alpha was in 2010.
Huh.
So,
the heck?
I don't know what you're thinking of, but it was definitely.
So I was at Crystal then at the time.
Yeah, it was definitely later.
Okay.
But it's definitely one of those games where you're like, yeah, you probably don't remember what your desk looked like at LucasArts.
No.
It's definitely one of those games where, unless you are like all the level designers, all the level and system and quest designers at Bethesda were playing it and talking about it. And I remember talking with Joel Burgess, who has since gone on to be a studio director at Cappy, and he worked on that. What's that Ubisoft with the hacker?
Dogs.
That's the one.
No.
But the one where you could possess anybody, you could add anybody to your team.
Yeah, I'm just blanking on it.
Yeah. Anyway, that one. He worked on that as well. But he and all, he was like, oh, you got to play this. And I went and got the thing. And I was like, I have no idea what is this? I'm lost. And if I had been in the pit with them or in their area and talking about it every day, I would have gotten my claws in. But without that, I was totally lost. That's probably the biggest ever for me. Like, I just didn't get Minecraft in 2010. For me, that's probably the biggest. Anyway, good luck, Jarko, with your release.
Another one, but I forgot it.
You already said Dark Souls, so I already had that drink.
That was a good one too, but oh well.
It is.
No, the one I forgot was a good one, but I'm blanking on it now.
Was it Republic Commando?
No.
Man, when that game came out, I didn't understand it at all. All right, let's call it there because we're over an hour and a half. I had that hidden from me for a while here, and we've drifted away.
Yeah, you're the producer, so I'm just following your lead.
I'll just cut out all the parts where you talk. Thank you for those emails. Again, those were sent to devgameclub@gmail.com. We'd love to have your reviews as well. I haven't had one in a while, so I'd love to read one. If you've been putting them on Spotify or, I don't know, whatever other podcasting apps you folks use out there, please let us know. We don't have a way to get to them. They're a great way to reach new folks. If you've already given us one, go ahead and tell a friend. It's great. Find us on the web at devgameclub.com or on Twitter at devgameclub, where you, I don't know, maybe if you squint, could find my co-host at
Tim Longo Jr. with a JR at the end.
Someday as well, we may Twitch again. I almost Twitched on Friday. I was going to put Metroid Prime 3 Corruption in. And
how do you play those games, by the way? Is it the only way to play that
I have a Wii
version?
I
still do too, yeah.
Oh, and there was a collection, I think, of the 3.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
I have one. I have 2 on the GameCube. I have 3 on the Wii, and I don't have one other than the Wii. And then I have a HDMI out from the Wii, so I can do that. Anyway, Someday, we'll be back. Actually, this week is the All-Star break, so maybe I'll get a chance to.
I mean, Twitter, what the heck's going on? So I don't know. I don't know what we're going to... Just Discord.
Go to the Discord. That was the next thing. You can find the link in the show notes. Our intro and outro music was written and performed by Kirk Hamilton, commissioned by friend of the cast Aaron Evers, and our logo, of course, as well as our merch store and the administration setup and all that stuff of that Discord are by Mark Garcia. Thank you so much, Mark. We say it every week, but you're doing the Lord's work. Have fun activating your station's self-destruct mechanisms this week, and good night.
Good night.